I also want to introduce our next speaker as well, and I really want to keep using this new acronym of Derek Batna. The best alternative to nothing at all is, again, sadly enough, a pre-recorded session because Zoom presentations were not possible, sadly enough. But I really want to introduce Professor Parizel. So he's the Chair of Radiology at Royal Perth Hospital and the University of Western Australia. And again, coming from the comments of Meng Lo as well, he's a globally recognized radiologist and he has extensive expertise in neuroradiology and AI. He has published over 500 peer-reviewed papers. He also has held prestigious positions, including being a president of the European Society of Radiology, and he has received numerous awards for his contributions to medical imaging. Today, he will share his first clinical experiences with portable ultra-low field MRI in stroke patients.
Good afternoon, and best regards from the beautiful city of Perth, Western Australia. It is a great pleasure to join you this afternoon and talk about first clinical experience in stroke imaging with the portable ultra-low field MRI. My name is Parizel. I am a neuroradiologist at Royal Perth Hospital and the David Hartley Chair of Radiology at the University of Western Australia, and I'm delivering this talk on behalf of the National Imaging Facility Point of Care MR Investigator Group. These are my disclosures, none of which are particularly relevant to the topic at hand, so essentially nothing in terms of conflict of interest to declare. This is the table of contents of what I would like to share with you this afternoon. We are going to say a few words about the National Imaging Facility Point of Care MR network, focus on ultra-low field MRI at Royal Perth Hospital with emphasis on stroke imaging, talk about limitations and potential, and give you some take-home messages. But let's start first with the NIF Point of Care network. The National Imaging Facility is Australia's advanced imaging network, providing open access to flagship imaging equipment, expertise, tools, data, and analysis. Seeing changes everything, and it is through the National Imaging Facility that we were able to acquire this point-of-care ultra-low field MRI. This is the point-of-care MRI group in Australia. You can see the research development team, and then the clinical research team and the national coordination team, all coordinated through the National Imaging Facility. The national network had 3 project aims with the point-of-care MR project. 1 was to develop and apply artificial intelligence. 2 was to improve the decision-making tools to aid time-critical diagnosis. And 3 was to increase access to high-quality MRI in remote areas. Our second topic is the ultra-low field MRI at Royal Perth Hospital. This is an image on the right-hand corner of one of our technologists, MR technologists, Sandy Noronha, driving the point-of-care MRI, the hyperfine swoop, through the corridors of Royal Perth Hospital. The system is mobile, provides bedside head imaging, is FDA approved and applicable in point-of-care settings. You can see the dimensions of the equipment in the images below. It is about 1.4 meters high with a width of 86 centimeters, can be plugged into a regular power outlet, and the weight is 630 kilograms. It has 1 coil, a head coil, which you can see here in a 3D view on the left, and the images in the middle and on the right show the wire network. The vertical orientation of the B0 field in a low field system means that a solenoid coil or a variation thereof can be used. And a solenoid coil has an intrinsic 2 or even 3-fold higher efficiency than a transverse resonator, so that the coil fits into the cylindrical bore of a 1.5 or 3T clinical system. This was our very first patient we did with the point of care hyperfine swoop about a year and a half ago, a patient with a left thalamic hemorrhage with intraventricular extension. And you can see on the top row axial T1, axial T2, and a CT scan. And the bottom row shows you the B0, the B900, TWI images, and the axial ADC map. As part of the project, we were obtaining corresponding images, and this is the same patient imaged on a 1.5 Siemens magnetome solar fit, and again showing the left thalamic hemorrhage with intraventricular extension. What I have done is I've made composite images showing the hyperfine swoop images in the top row and a 1.5 Siemens magnetome solar fit in the bottom row. And you can see that the signal to noise ratio and indeed the contrast to noise ratio and the aesthetics of the image are far better on the 1.5 than on the hyperfine swoop. But interestingly, when you see the hemorrhage in the left thalamus, you see the areas of diffusion restriction indicating blood in the left frontal horn and in the left occipital horn. Another patient with a recent left frontal stroke, posterior left frontal stroke with diffusion restriction and ADC lowering. And this patient also had an old right caudate nucleus infarct that can be seen on the images. Again, you notice that the signal intensity, the signal to noise ratio, and the contrast to noise ratio are far worse on the ultra low field system, but you can see the stroke, the recent stroke, as an area of diffusion restriction and ADC lowering, and you can identify the previous stroke as a focal area of cystic encephalomalacia. A patient with a left temporal cortical infarct with diffusion restriction, top row 0.064 hyperfine swoop images, bottom row Siemens magnetome solar fit images. You recognize the area of diffusion restriction that is in the superficial cortical gyri of the left temporal lobe. It has a corresponding lowering of the ADC values, and on the T2 weighted images, you can see a patulous swelling of the cortical gray matter in the left temporal lobe. Patient with a right thalamic and a right mesencephalic strokes. It's fairly easy to identify the right thalamic stroke, both on the ultra-low field and the superconducting scanner images. When it comes to the stroke in the mesencephalon, indicated by the yellow circles, it's much more difficult to identify that on the ultra-low field images, likely because it is too small and because the scanner doesn't have the spatial resolution required to identify the lesion. This is from the same patient, just a few different views, flare and coronal views, showing the bifocal nature of the infarct involving the right thalamus and the right side of the mesencephalon. A patient with a right insular stroke, the right insular cortex stroke, with diffusion restriction. It's fairly easy to identify the area of diffusion restriction, which can be seen well on both the ultra-low field and the superconducting MRI scanner, even though the overall image quality is significantly better on the high field system. And this is simply a patient with tissue loss in the right frontal lobe, a so-called right frontal lobe encephalomalacia, which was due to an old hemorrhage. And you can see the hyperfine swoop and the 1.5 Tesla images. We have shown a number of case examples of strokes. So what are the limitations and what is the potential of this technology in our experience? Well, as you all know, in MRI, the detected signal contains actual signal and background noise. When you're dealing in a high field system with high signal to noise ratio, it is much easier to identify and measure the signal from the sample. However, at ultra low fields, you have low signal to noise ratio, and the background noise makes it difficult to identify the actual signal. And the problem is essentially to separate the actual signal from the background noise. And this is a challenge given the ultra low field strength of this scanner. We've seen a few examples where high field provided a clear answer and the ultra low field did not show the abnormality. And here is a patient with a punctate embolic infarct behind the occipital horn of the right lateral ventricle, which can be seen as a focal area of diffusion restriction on the high field image, but the corresponding ultra-low field image does not show this small focal area, presumably because the volume of the infarct is too small and the spatial resolution of the scanner is not enough to identify this lesion. We should not forget that the difference in signal to noise ratio between the ultra low field scanner and a, for example, 3 Tesla high field scanner is a factor of 47, almost 50. The Larmor frequency is correspondingly very, very different and is only about 2% of what a 3 Tesla MRI scanner provides. And my way of explaining that is that the power and sophistication influence performance, and the ultra-low field scanner in terms of locomotion would be the equivalent of a 50cc two-stroke engine as compared to a 2.5-liter turbocharged luxury SUV. That is about the difference. It's a huge difference, a factor 50, 47 to be precise. What the group at Monash University has done is to show how artificial intelligence can improve image quality and overcome challenges in the implementation of low field MRI. And that is in terms of absolute image quality. The verdict is out whether that will be enough to improve the detection of stroke. And here are some images obtained in the left-hand column with the 64 millitesla, the middle column of a 3 Tesla superconducting system, and then the synthetic images generated by the AI, generative AI network. So the Monash group has published their results. There is a first paper that came out in December 2023 on improving portable low-field MRI image quality through image-to-image translation using paired low and high-field images, and a second paper on improving consistency in regional brain volumes measured in ultra-low field has just been published online. And you can see some screenshots from the two papers that were authored by Tawhid Islam and the Point of Care MRI group. So there is a lot of research potential in this area. So in finishing up, let me try to give you a few take-home messages, which will be first general messages and then specific to stroke. So in my view, there is a growing medical demand for accessible point-of-care systems. That is, bringing imaging to the patient rather than the other way around. Low-field MRI has regained popularity in the literature, in scientific meetings, reopening the debate on its clinical relevance. Ultra-low MRI field systems may improve patient comfort and safety. Patients are less anxious, lower acoustic noise, decreased projectile risk. They require a lot less energy. You can simply plug them in to an electrical power outlet and plug them out when you no longer need them. They're easy to operate with a wireless tablet computer, something like an iPad, and they yield immediate information to the clinician, which is vital, especially in intensive care settings. Now, in some strokes, the low field scanners may be providing sufficient diagnostic information, though small embolic infarcts are likely to be missed with the current technology. It's not clear what the minimum volume for detection is. It's probably, at the current state of the art, something like 5 milliliters. But there is promise that there will be a 3D diffusion-weighted imaging sequence forthcoming, which should improve the spatial resolution so that we could detect small infarcts of only 1 or 2 milliliters volume. Second point is that the low signal to noise and contrast to noise ratios negatively impact the image quality, and they remain the limiting factor for the usefulness in the clinical setting. And what we see is that developments in ultra-low field systems are accelerating through application of artificial intelligence algorithms in image acquisition and reconstruction. In closing, I would like to acknowledge the Royal Perth Hospital team, especially our medical imaging technologists, our admin support, medical physicists involved with the project, and especially our clinicians from neurology and the ICU. And with this, I would like to thank you once again for the opportunity to talk to you from Perth and wish you a fantastic OHBM meeting in Brisbane. Thank you very much and best regards.
A wonderful talk to really show the clinical experiences in stroke patients. Any comments? And I hope Professor Law is able to answer your questions, but any comments or questions on this presentation? Or any feedback? Yeah, please. Yeah, go ahead. Really want to make this an informal educational session.
Okay, so again, about the reconstruction algorithms. So far, if you just compare the scans from ultra low field scanner and 3T, for instance, overall, it looks like a decent enhancement. But what are so far the shortcomings? What are we not seeing in these reconstructions? So basically, what are the axes of improvement so far, the outstanding kind of challenges in the reconstruction?
Yeah, great question. Charlene or?
Yeah, you want to go first? One of the biggest concerns with using any of these generative AI methods is hallucinations and the image, making a fake image or making an image that doesn't represent what the real pathology is like. So far, with the strategies that you're seeing here today, that hasn't happened yet. which is good. And I think we've been very careful in picking the strategies where we've trained the model to produce an image that looks like the high field image without actually making things up and hallucinating and making lesions up. The issue is that, and you'll see that we'll start using some large language models and some RAG assisted models that are based on training sets that are out there, which will start making hallucinations, and there's a concern about what that will look like. Because obviously, these data sets that we're acquiring are data sets that have been acquired from this network, and they're paired data sets, so we're using them to train the model. But if you're using stuff that's on the internet and large language models, then you may actually start seeing lesions that may not be there or diagnoses that may not be there. That's a concern. But we have to go down that path, and you'll hear later on today what happens when we go down that path and the generation of potentially fake data and fake hallucinations, which is always a concern.
Any other comments or questions?
Are there similar devices and algorithms covering adult or personal pathologies as well?
From the low field?
Yeah.
Yeah, so these so the Siemens Healthineer 0.55 Tesla 3 Max can scan the whole body, and it generates, again, very high quality 3D images from the 0.55 Tesla scanner. The suite that you're seeing, as Paul was alluding to, is only a head coil. There are others that are making coils for extremities. We can't really put the whole body and torso into that scanner yet, but soon you'll see, particularly the whole back scanner, that kind of technology. And those of you who go to ISMM will see that people are probably producing, right, Zalin, the whole body torso scans for with these low field scanners, and I think it won't be very long when we'll start seeing whole body scans at the very low field.
Yeah, it's really like a fast-moving field, so yeah, really expecting a lot of other applications as well. Other comments? Okay, we'll move to the next presenter.